Hi, welcome back to another episode of Ben's Machines. Thank you for joining us. We're on part 3 of the LS tractor project rebuild. So today we're going to focus on the engine part. So today what I want to do is get the clutch disc and the clutch plate installed and maybe just give you a quick update on what work I've done on the engine already and what work still has to be done. So I guess what I'll start with talking about now is an update on the exhaust. So let's go over to the motor. So in part 1 of the video series, this part of the exhaust was more or less positioned like this. And you'll be able to see this from the first video. This flange was actually welded on to this pipe like this. And that's because there was some instrumentation and other parts that were attached to this outlet pipe for emissions testing. And this flange part does not adapt well with the muffler that goes with the tractor. So what I ended up doing is I just took my grinder and I ground the weld off. So this is why you see everything here is all shiny because I used my die grinder and I cut off this piece and then just kind of cleaned that up. And now what this is going to allow is once this is installed, the muffler pipe comes over top of this pipe. This clamp goes over like this, over top of this pipe and over top of the muffler pipe that comes out this way, then down and out this way, so that this is going to be ready to accept that. And there was also a boss that was welded onto here, kind of like what you see right here. So one of these was actually positioned right there for some sensing equipment. It's in the way, so I had to knock that off and grind that down. So I'm going to send this over to a friend of mine and he's going to weld this back in and and maybe do a little bit of extra little welding in here just to make sure everything is perfect. So that's the status on this part of the build. So I'll put this back up here. This goes into the recycling. So this is the location where there's a pump, an external pump that's mounted here, and then there's another one on the back side of the engine mounted over here. Right here you can see this is not authentic to the engine. This is just like a blank plate. Take these 2 bolts off, remove the plate, and then install the actual pump. So we probably won't get to that installation in this video. What we're going to do today is work on the clutch. So let's have a look at the clutch side of the engine. Okay, so this is the area where we're going to install the clutch disc and clutch plate. I've already taken my die grinder and I just cleaned the surface here of the flywheel. The next step I'm going to do is just get some brake clean. I'm just going to spray some brake clean on here, make sure that surface is perfectly clean. And then what I'll do is that I'll start by installing my 3 dowel pins, and then we'll just go from there. We'll take it one step at a time. Just gonna put a little bit of anti-seize on these dowel pins. Just gonna give it a little tap. And then when I hear the change, when I hear the sound change, then I know that I've got it in deep enough. The irony here is that I just spent some time cleaning off the surface with brake clean, only to put... Did you hear the sound change when the dowel pin bottomed out? The dowel pins are used to locate the clutch plate. Okay? I'll just take up the residue. Okay, so dowel pins are in. Next, I'll get the clutch disc. Now the clutch disc has two sides. So there's this side and that side, and it's dependent, or it's you got to be specific about which side you install it. So flywheel side or the non-flywheel side. So in this case, this says flywheel side. So I want to make sure that the clutch plate goes like this when I install it. Now you see how the clutch disc has to be installed this way, and then I got to put the clutch plate on after. So there's a special tool there's a tool that you can buy to facilitate this work, and it's called the clutch disc alignment tool. And that's what I'm going to use now to help with this job. So this is my clutch aligning tool kit. What it comes with is essentially a metal bar with a threaded part on here, and then a whole bunch of different sized inserts. And these inserts are meant to go into this part of the engine. I believe this inside here is called the pilot bearing. And what this is meant to do is to align the parts, all the components, this side of the flywheel, so that everything kind of stacks up nice. So as you see, what I've done is I've selected one of these inserts, okay? One of these inserts here that threads on this end of this rod with a certain diameter, okay? Outside diameter of this. You thread this on. And what this does is that it sort of locates itself inside the pilot bearing that's in the engine here. And if I let go of this, this shaft is more or less representing the extension of that crankshaft out this way. So the trick then is that you use this generic cone-shaped piece. And now I'll take the clutch disc. I'll install the clutch disc like this. And then I'll insert the cone on top of here. And I'll just raise this up So the idea here is that this is meant to locate the clutch plate more or less in the position that it has to be on, or it has to be when you then proceed with installing the clutch plate. Okay, so I'll leave this, I'm gonna just leave this like this. Obviously it's not perfect, there's a little bit of wiggle room as you can see here, but you know, it serves to at least more or less get this part here of the clutch disc lined up so that when the engine gets moved into position to line up with the shaft that's in the bell housing, all the components kind of slide in here and line up as close as possible. Okay? So this is the clutch aligning tool, and I basically picked this up for about $25 at my local big box store. The next step I'm going to do is get the clutch plate. Oh, here's the clutch plate. And what I'm going to do here, similarly to what I did on the flywheel side, I'm just going to give this a quick spray with some brake clean to make sure that this surface right here is free of any oil or contaminants. Let's give this surface a spray. Here's my number 12 metric bolts. They're all ready. They're right here. I've got my 12-inch socket, 6-inch extension, and my 3/8 ratchet drive. So the people that were involved with taking this apart, these guys were real pros. They actually used the center punch and they put two little dots on the flywheel right here. There's two little dots right there. And the nice thing about this is that whenever I get the clutch plate in place, there are two little dots right here on the clutch plate. So I'm going to align those two dots with the two dots on the flywheel, so I know that this goes back together like the manufacturer had intended to. Okay, so I'm going to start by getting it onto the dowel pins. May need to wiggle it a little bit. Maybe I'll just use the handle of my hammer. Okay, so maybe what I'll do is I'll get a couple of bolts started. Maybe the bolts will just draw it in. I'm not putting any Loctite or anti-seize on these bolts. They're going in quite easily, so that's a good sign. Okay, so maybe I'll just start getting these bolts in place. And we'll do it in a crisscross fashion. Actually, I can just put these in by hand. I still have this in place. Okay, as you can see, everything seems to be lining up nicely. As I'm tightening the bolts, the clutch plate is now sliding nicely over top of over these dowel pins. Okay, and my clutch plate is nice and aligned with the pilot bearing. Motor spins freely. So this is just an old breaker bar that's lying around. It's not the one that I use, but I just keep these things around for occasions like this. So I'm just going to use this. I'm going to wedge that in there like that. Okay, so I should be able to torque these bolts down. So let's see what happens. 25 foot-pounds. So I have my torque wrench set at 25 foot-pounds, and let's torque these bolts down. I'm going to do it in a crisscross pattern. Looks like I already have it torqued. Oh, that one went a little bit. That's good. I'll just go around one more time, make sure I didn't forget anyone. Okay, so there you have it. All the bolts are torqued in. Now what I can do is I can just pull out my clutch alignment tool. Okay, and now this should be ready to get inserted directly into the bell housing. So I think we're going to end the video here, but let's take the torque wrench over to the workbench for a second. So just as a quick tip, it's always a good idea to make sure that your torque wrenches have no setting, or they're not torqued down when you store them. That way you can make sure that the next time you use your torque wrench and you set it to the torque that you want to apply, that the device is working as accurately as possible. You don't want to leave the torque wrench set to a certain torque level, because I think over time the equipment might sort of lose some of its accuracy if you leave it stored like that. So I make sure that my torque wrenches are stored like that. So that's basically it for the work that we're going to do today on the engine. I hope you had a great time tuning in. I know I did. We're one step closer to getting this engine mated with the bell housing. In the next video, probably what you're going to see me is getting the lift prepared to raise the motor up and disconnect the motor from the skid, the shipping skid, so that we can get the engine and the transmission mated. So stay tuned. We'll see you next time.